So now, a big thing that we're moving forward on is our sports field study. You'll remember that through the Healthy Infrastructure Plan, one of the major high priority action steps was to look at how we can create more access to the assets we have with sports fields. And so Marcus has been working with Pros Consultant to do an analysis of what our inventory is now and how we can maximize its use, and then where we need to see expansion. So I'm going to hand it over to Marcus.
Thank you, Stacy. Awesome. All right, Mayor, Council, thank you for having us today. I'm going to introduce to you something that's kind of new on your radar, and that is the athletic field study. And kind of the agenda we go through is why we're doing this, what brought it on, and Stacy kind of alluded to it just a second ago. But also the methods we use to get to our findings and what next steps we're going to take from there. So what is an athletic field study? It's basically, it's a comprehensive look of what our current assets are, how we use them, what type of fields we use, who's using them. It's a broad look of everything we have and seeing what we have, what we could do better, those type of things. So we assess our current and future athletic needs of the community. What do we have right now? Are we meeting those needs right now? And if we aren't, how do we get there? We identify what we need to do now to improve, and not only now, but 5, 10, 15 years from now to make sure we keep up with our growth. It's going to help guide our development for the next 5 or 10 years. It also takes a look at our operational, procedural, financial, and investment strategies that we currently have to see if we need to improve on those things. Are we doing the right things? Is our booking strategies that we employed 10, 15 years ago still relevant, or do we need to update those things? And then also determine the level of service right now. Are they meeting the needs of our current and future needs for the community? We need to make sure of that. And so why now? Well, Stacy said the Healthy Infrastructure Plan told us that they're high priority needs. We have, there's another box there. There's 4 high priority needs off of the Healthy Infrastructure Plan. And more importantly, they're telling us we need to work on Vista Ridge Park, Spillway Park. We need to create more options for recreational-based sports. So we need to make sure we're encompassing everybody on that. And then acquire new property. Those are very, very important things we need to look at. So what are the methods they used? So we hired Pros Consulting. They came out. They spent a lot of time with our staff internally first, looking at what our booking practices were, looking at all of our options, and doing a tour facility, looking at all of our inventory. So they really had a good grasp of what we had. And then they went out to our public engagement portion of it. They reached out to all of our groups that use our fields. They reached out to some of the larger organizations that use fields. They try to get a really broad scope of what the needs were. They looked at the recreational trends analysis, the level of service that we currently use for our residents. And then they looked at all of our inventory, not only locally, but broadly as well. They looked at Capel, Flower Mound, all the cities around us to see what they had, to see if we're meeting the needs not only locally, but in the general region. And then they did an analysis of our booking strategies. Again, how are we booking fields for all of our groups and people who want to use our fields? Is it easy for them to use our fields? So they took a look at all that. So they came back with 4 major areas of findings: the current asset optimization, and I'll get into each one of these individually. New asset developments, the utilization and maintenance standards, and the programming and booking strategies. So the first thing we look at right here is, and this is a pointer, right? So if you look over here, this is the current inventory of all of our fields right now, starting with youth baseball, adult baseball, and so forth. The next column is our current service and level based upon population. So in this scenario, we have one field per 33,350 people. Their recommended service level for youth baseball is one field per 20,000. So in this next, in our current facility standards, we have a deficit of three fields right now. Some of them we're meeting the current standards. We're a little low right now in the rectangle soccer fields. But then further on, if you look, based on our projected population growth over the next 10 to 15 years, we'll need some additional fields to meet the needs of our growth. Then we looked at the current asset optimization. The first thing they came back with was the practice space utilization. That was a major thing that a lot of our groups said that we don't have enough practice space out there. And so they asked us to identify areas in our current park system that we can accommodate these groups. So as an example, we have Wayne Frady Park here in this back area. Is this an area that we can look at where we could put maybe a backstop or some soccer goals or something to accommodate those practice areas for these groups? And then if we do, they asked us to create a fee structure for renting out those. So when we put kids out on these fields, it's going to take a lot more maintenance. So we're going to have to pay for that somehow. So they asked us to create a fee structure, real low, but you have to have some kind of control over that, who's using it, make sure we're not overusing it. If there's issues, we can close it down, those type of things. They also asked us to identify private areas, such as like church spaces. There's a lot of churches here in Lewisville that have big open spaces, green spaces, that if we make connections with them and have another avenue for people to reach out to, so if they call us looking for practice space and we can't accommodate them for some reason, we can say, hey, here's a list of places that may be able to help you. So creating those partnerships and connections for our residents. The next thing is at Lake Park. So we have two different things, Lake Park and Railroad. The first thing at Lake Park is the field and amenity upgrades. So it's a great facility. We do have really good fields there, but we do have some aging infrastructure as far as bathrooms, concession stands. They said, probably need bleachers, more shade for your patrons, those type of things. So those are some upgrades they recommended there. But they also recommended considering a long-term relocation of the soccer fields at Lake Park to be closer to Railroad. That would allow us to hold bigger tournaments. When promoters come looking to have tournaments at our place, they want fields that are in close proximity. Even though they're 5 miles apart, they don't like two different sites. So they asked us to look in the long term to how we can accommodate that. The next thing is at Railroad Park. So up here in the corner, in the northeast part of the park, we have 4 football fields currently. And based off of the utilization rate of those fields, which I'll get to in a little bit, those have really, really low utilization rates. So they recommended that we take 2 of those fields and turn them into soccer fields. That way we can add to our soccer inventory, which you saw that we had 2 field deficit right now. That could complete that. And then the football teams would easily be able to use the other 2 fields. So they want to convert football number 1 to a 7v7 soccer field, and then football 4 to a 9v9 soccer field. So that way we can accommodate and hopefully hold some bigger tournaments out there. The next thing they asked was, we have some issues with our diamond fields, and you'll see in our utilization rate that we have some low use of these fields right now. One of the major issues right here is our backstops. If you look at those, and if you've ever been out there, they're pretty far back from home plate. They're about 80 feet. It's not conducive for youth baseball at all, and that's one of the biggest drivers for field rentals. It's way too far back, so we miss out on a lot of tournaments because of that. So they recommended moving those backstops up, reconfiguring that, and even the dugouts for the teams are still far back, moving those closer to the field of play, and so it's a lot easier for teams to use. The other major thing they recommended is artificial turf. Now, that's a big thing because it's a big investment, but it does open up a lot of different avenues for us. One is it can accommodate a lot of different sports, especially on the baseball and softball side. You can have, you know, anywhere from t-ball all the way to adult baseball fields on the same field, just because they have the same configuration, but you just move bases in and out. You use portable mounds, portable fences for the outfield, so you can configure it for any age group you want. The other big thing is the adaptability of it. We can hold, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, is for our Miracle League that we're starting now. We want to make sure they can use this, and the artificial turf will allow them to do that. We talked about the adaptability and the everybody's welcome and safe, those kind of things that we do internally a whole lot. That's going to be one of those avenues that we could bring that Miracle League to Railroad Park so they could play among everybody. The next thing is our new asset development. Right off the bat, the big thing is complete Vista Ridge, and we all know that that's coming up on the bottom. They also want us to acquire land to facilitate clustering of the soccer fields. Again, move those soccer fields from Lake Park closer to Railroad. That way we can have bigger tournaments and we can attract more leagues. They told us to look at development of the East Hill Park or Spillway Park, whatever we want to call it, for more practice space. That's a good area that we want to look at. They asked us again, strengthen our relationship with LISD, which we're, you know, Stacy alluded to earlier, that we need to renew that contract and then to make sure that we can expand on that, and other entities such as the churches for shared field space. And then upgrade field and amenities throughout the system. Make sure we don't lag behind and let things get in disrepair. So make those investments. Our current field utilization, which I talked about earlier, this gives you an idea of what we're looking at. So these are our fields. This is our field inventory. This is our current annual hours per the type of field combined, averaged out. This is their best practices maximum usage hours. So this, we shouldn't go over these amounts right here. This is the difference between the two, and these are our current utilization rates. So you could see down here, football, 7%, it's really low. The other one that's really low is adult baseball fields. That's all of Railroad Park. That's just showing how much they're not being used right now, and we need to make those changes so we can use those assets. A lot of these other ones, it really opened our eyes into our booking strategies, that we could do a whole lot better to book more time on these fields and do a better job of putting in what's actually out there to make sure we're using our fields to the best of their abilities. So that jumps right into the programming and booking strategies. Refine our communication with the public. How do people book our fields right now? How do we make it easier for them? And one of those is changes in our processes. Frankly, they're a little antiquated. You know, you have to call in, you have to call and see if there's field available, and then, you know, have to wait for someone on the phone and such forth. Now, they want us to use the online tools. Now, we're working on that already, so we can have, by the end of the year, we can have online rentals. We're going to start with putting a calendar on the page so people can see, are there fields available right now? They can look, I want to see Tuesday afternoon at 6 o'clock, is there a soccer field we can rent? So we'll have that part done by probably summer, and then by fall we should have the ability to actually rent online, so they don't even have to call, they don't have to wait, they can just go online and get that done right away. And then they want us to take a look at our current facility use agreements and rental practices to make sure that we're up to date and using the current language that we should be using. And finally, utilization and maintenance standards. Now, they didn't dig into exactly how we maintain our fields right now, but they did want to make sure that we're using up-to-date practices, that we're going to the right conferences to make sure we know how to combat certain things, make sure the grass goes great, how to make it better and last better for our groups. They want us to become the economic driver. If we can bring the facilities up to where they need to be, we'll be able to host a lot more tournaments, which brings a lot more people into Louisville using our restaurants, heads in beds, those kind of things that we really like to see. And then attract new leagues because of that. They know we could be that shining star for our current and future residents. And then they just want to make sure that we're making sure we're taking care of our fields the way they should be. So looking forward, what are we doing now? So we've already started our booking and strategies procedures. We've already looked into see how we can be easier to rent from. I mentioned earlier we're going to start looking at the online calendar, online booking, those type of things, and then making sure we're taking care of our legacy sports fields, our leagues, and making sure that we have strong relationships with them. And then our field maintenance practices, making sure again that we recently hired a turf foreman that's already doing an amazing job of making sure our fields look good and they're playable all the time. So we've already begun to make those type of changes. We've already started looking at viable practice spaces. What areas in our current park system can accommodate sports? What improvements do we need to make to allow that to happen, and what investment we're going to have to make into to have that happen. Railroad football field conversion, that's something that we could do in-house pretty easily, and that we should have that for the start of 2025. So looking forward, again now, bond Proposition C, we got to go for that. The Vista Ridge Park development, we need to get that done, help us acquire more land. Those are the things we really need to get so we can start looking forward. 4B, start looking at the baseball fields, the redesign of the backstops and dugouts. We're actually looking to get that design here done pretty soon. And then what is it going to cost to convert all those to artificial turf? And then Lake Park, facility upgrades. We'll see what we can do about upgrading bathrooms, concession stands, bleachers, those type of things, and then any other field upgrades we might need to make. And I think that's all. What questions do you have?
So I want to start off with, I love the detail here, because whenever we think about land use and I hear about a warehouse or another vertical structure going up, my immediate thought is, how are we doing with our 10-minute walk to a park? How are we doing with our tree canopy? And that helps me make an informed decision about the quality of life in Louisville. So I appreciate the detail here. Secondly, when it comes to booking and programming strategy, have you met Chris with his AI stuff?
Yeah, they actually do help us a ton on the way it works with our booking software and the user interface. We work hand in hand and all that. Yeah.
I'll basically say some of the same things that Councilman Kelly said. I think that having the online thing, nobody wants to call on the phone anymore. We got to have the online thing.
Yeah, we're definitely working towards that, and like I said, by third or fourth quarter of this year, we'll have that up and running.
And who's actually renting the football fields? What are they using that for?
It's Lewis. What is it called? I'm sorry.
Louisville Football Association, LFA.
Yeah, Louisville Football Association. They're a legacy group although they're very, very small, they're still kind of hanging on but they're not using the fields what they're intended.
I mean, the world I live in, the football fields are soccer fields. So, I mean, it seems like maybe if there's a more need for soccer, maybe that football field could be one of the fields, and it's a combo deal. I mean,
yeah,
I think
we actually started last year doing it at a combination. Sometimes it's football, and then when they weren't using it, we did start renting it out to soccer. It's just a little bit hard because there are different lines. We have to do different paintings, those type of things. So if we can dedicate those as pure soccer fields, it's a lot easier on our end.
I mean, this seems like if you got a more need for the soccer tournaments, that the football's just going to have to use a combo field kind of a thing.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Well, I think a soccer field can be used for several other different sports, right? So
Sure.
A football field's a football field, but a soccer field could be all sorts of things, like a lacrosse field.
Yeah, and we hold lacrosse tournaments here, especially during the summer.
Yes, I know.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the other things about the baseball fields, if we get those to turf, we can actually hold soccer games on those too. They're just so adaptable and versatile that we can use, if we have a big tournament, we can designate those 4 fields as into soccer fields and do some temporary paint on those. It's pretty awesome if we can do that. All right. Well,
So I've got a couple. No worries. My apologies. The online rent, I cannot stress how important that is to get that done, because I think that feeds into some of our utilization rate. And frankly, I would want to see what our utilization rate becomes once that happens. I will tell you that a couple of the points in this really disturb me. And I'm not a sports ball guy, so that's probably why. But we spent a lot of money on that baseball field, and dugouts are not standard. I mean, backstops are not standard. How did that happen, that we have a facility that doesn't do the basics?
Yeah, I mean, when they built them as probably as more of a major league type of deal, where they're from, where the back of home plate all the way to the backstop. Those are major league type distances for that.
Okay.
And
so it's an adult baseball field that really needs to be used for kids.
It does, yeah. I mean, that's the biggest need in the Metroplex by far. Youth baseball is just enormous, and they come and look at those fields and they say, if there's 80 feet between home plate and the backstop, 2 or 3 runs can score after one pass ball. So, they're like, no, thank you.
I gotcha. Okay, that helps. And I know we have the need chart, and it says that a population of this needs this many. But if our utilization is garbage, I'm concerned about adding more fields before I know if my community actually hits the statistical need, right?
Right.
I don't know if I would want to be chasing more fields if I don't know that my community doesn't use more fields.
Right, and I think that's one of the things that we learned internally. We weren't booking the times on the fields appropriately, probably. We learned a lot about ourselves during this process. With our legacy, we just said, all right, you got Saturdays, they're all yours. Well, they didn't use the whole Saturday. They maybe used 2 or 3 hours of the Saturday, but they weren't using the whole thing, and we're allowing them to have the whole time. So now that we're taking control of, putting them in hour by hour, every time they use it, we're getting their schedules in early, so then that way we can rent it out to other people. Our utilization rates they're gonna go a lot higher now.
Well, I can totally understand where new systems and processes can absolutely increase utilization.
Absolutely.
So I'm not saying I don't want more green space. Do not take that. I just think it's hard to tell residents we're going to be investing in more of this stuff when the data shows we're not using the stuff we have.
Right, and that was part of the, do we really need more? And yes, they recommend based off a service level, in that, they have a recommended, but I mean, a big part of it is us.
Yeah, and anecdotally, I will tell you, in my 20 years of having kids in soccer and all of that stuff, the hardest thing in this town is practice space. Just unstructured practice space. Just a flat piece of grass where I can, kick goals, put some cones out, and I don't have to necessarily book it or anything like that. I don't know if that's the case for most municipalities. I bet it is.
It is, and I've worked in a couple different ones, and it is. It's always an issue.
So I love the idea of that space maybe being virtually check-outable, but still being kind of available for residents to throw a picnic blanket down on, and not everything has to be programmed.
Yeah, one of the things that we've done in the past is, and we call them like level 2 fields, where it's really a first come first serve type of deal, but you can rent it if you have a practice you want to have there, for a team or such. But if you just want to go out and play on it, there's nothing stopping from anybody from doing that.
Well, I greatly appreciate the data-driven approach here. I really think that this will help take us up another notch. I want to make sure that we're not, if we're going to go all in on baseball, let's make sure that we're appropriately ranked, because Flower Mound's got a tremendous program going on with Bakersfield, and then they're putting in a whole nother complex further west of us. So what I don't want to do is get into, ¿Quién es más macho, right? Right. We need to make sure we have the right assets available for everybody. So awesome.
Great.
Thank you, guys. Right. Any other questions, comments?
One more quick
yes,
comment.
Sir.
So as we think about online, I'm sure this already crossed your mind, easy use is paramount, and we already talked about this a little bit, but if I have to go create an account, be able to rent a field, I'm already out. So we should be able to take, give me a credit card, preferably Venmo, something like that. So I should need an account to actually go through and rent the field. Just things like that to be thinking about. Make sense?
Yeah.